Welcome to Feed Your Lion. I'm Dr. Jodelle Yount, and I'm here to aid you in the mastery of total health, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and financial. So prepare to have your wellness tank filled up with this podcast. My name's Jodelle. I am formerly an ER doctor. I now have a health and wellness clinic in Ashland. We do a lot of functional medicine, hormones, talk a lot about nutrition. We have a female gym. So I was asked today, Julie, actually she's your next speaker, and she works out at the same gym I do. So anyways, so we're going to do just some basic overviews of nutrition. I'm kind of going to skim across the board. If you have any questions, I'll be around through the end. So if you have any questions on anything I'm talking about, and I'm not going in depth on anything, I'm just going to kind of do some surface things and give an overview. So for an intro, and you guys do have the PowerPoint, correct? Okay, good. I added a couple little things in, and there may be some notes that you want to take, but for an intro, why is nutrition important? First of all, 3/4 of Americans have at least one chronic disease. And what I mean by chronic disease, that's hypertension, that's diabetes, that's heart disease. So super common in the United States. And as we age, it gets worse. And then we have more than half actually now of adults have 2 or more chronic diseases. So this is a huge problem. And like I said before, I'm from the ER originally. So our Western medicine system, we are great at acute things. So if you come in with a bone sticking out of your leg, we're great at that. If you're having a heart attack, we can handle that. But these chronic diseases we're terrible with, okay? We don't manage them well. It's pill after pill, pharmaceutical after pharmaceutical. And that was kind of the reason I switched gears a little later here, is because of those things, because we don't do well with chronic disease, and it's kind of become this huge epidemic. And we have a lot of competing interests. So I've switched more into the functional medicine, which looks more at the root cause of why you're having these diseases and how do we address this. And nutrition plays a huge significant role in that. So I've been learning more and more about nutrition. And the sad thing is, in our current system, you get really, all through med school and residency, 12 years of training, I had maybe 6 hours of nutrition total. And it plays such a huge thing in these disease processes, and you're really not educated on it. So it's important, and that's why we're talking about these things. So common myths I want to address. First of all, I do a lot of education in my office. People want to try every diet. You guys know, you hear, how many different diets do we hear about in a year or two? I mean, everything under the sun. And it really creates this metabolic imbalance. The problem with these diets are you're yo-yoing back and forth with your weight. A lot of times we do these extreme calorie cuts, and they're actually really terrible for your metabolism. It puts your body into this flight or fight, mode, and your metabolism actually really goes down to try to accommodate that, because it feels like you're starving to death. So the problem is with that, you don't rebound from that when you do that. You don't come back from that. Your metabolism stays low, okay? So that means in your daily, just like everyday waking, breathing, moving, you're not burning as many calories. And again, it's super hard to recover that, and these yo-yo diets do that. It also causes you to lose nutrients, and you can also lose a lot of muscle. And I'm going to tell you, and I'll talk about this a little later, it's way harder to put back on muscle than it is to do fat, okay? Even with the GLP-1s, the problem I have with people that need to lose 20 or 30 pounds, they're jumping on these GLP-1s. You guys have heard about that. They lose muscle with that, and it's really, really hard to get that back. And when they gain the weight back, it typically is the fat, not the muscle. So those are some of the problems with it. You really, and what I encourage a lot in my office is those small, consistent changes, doing a little bit and then adding on to that. And you never do like excessive calorie deficits and things like that. These small positive habit changes and things that you can maintain for the rest of your life, not these quick fixes. So make it simple and start small. So again, not about the diet. A lot of this is the quality of the food, okay? And we're going to go into each of these, but we're going to talk about whole foods, quality protein sources, and protein is huge. Again, I spend a lot of time educating on protein. Fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy fat sources, and the things that you want to stay away from, which are just as important. Anything ultra processed was everything in our grocery store, and we'll kind of go through some of the labeling in a minute, but any of those artificial dyes and sweeteners. Seed oils is a big one that's getting a lot more, and you guys have maybe seen that on TikTok or social media. We'll talk about the dangers with seed oils and any of the added sugars. All right, let's see here. Sorry, my texts are popping up, I guess. All right, so what is a whole food? Basically, if you can look at it and name it, it's a whole food. I can say you got a banana, you got a piece of lettuce, you got a steak, it's one ingredient. If you're seeing these multi-ingredient foods, those are processed, okay? So we keep it simple there. So it's unprocessed, it's unrefined, it doesn't have any added, salts, sugars, fats, whatever to it, okay? They're very nutrient dense. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals in them, okay? So it's their natural state. So if you're going through and you're like the grocery store and you're seeing, 20 ingredients on it, that's a highly processed food, okay? Try to stick with, very few to no ingredient foods and make it simple, okay? Now, I'm not going to be spending a ton of time telling you how to calculate macronutrients and micros. I do want to give you a basic, overview of that, okay? Macros are the main things, and when you hear people tracking their macros, they're talking about proteins, fats, and carbs, okay? Those are the three categories. I just put alcohol on there for people just so they know it's non-essential. There's really nothing like nutrient-based. There's no nutritional value with alcohol, so we don't typically calculate it, but it does give you empty calories, so it does cause people to gain weight quick, okay? But it doesn't give you anything of value in it, okay? And then, so that's your macronutrients. Your micros, they're needed in smaller amounts, but they're very important for different functions, for growth, for development. They help with immune support and preventing disease. So you've got two categories. You've got your vitamins, and the vitamins are broken down into fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins, okay? So the fat-soluble ones are the A, D, E, and K, and they are actually stored in the body as fat, okay? The other ones, you pee them out. So they're water soluble, they're B and C vitamins. If you guys have ever taken a B vitamin, sometimes your urine gets really bright orange or bright yellow. That's like the riboflavin, the vitamin B12 will do that. They'll change your urine that color because you're peeing those extras out, okay? And then you've got minerals. You've got the macro minerals, which means they're in a little bit more amount. So like things like calcium and magnesium, we store those in larger amounts. And then they call trace minerals the other group. And those are the ones that are still really important, but you have lesser amounts. So that's like zinc, iodine, iron, and there's more of those. But again, it's your micros or your vitamins and minerals. They're very important, but you don't need them in the large amounts, okay? So how do we calculate macros with our calories? Okay, again, I'm not spending a significant amount of time on this, but I wanted to give you an example so you understood how this works. Kilocalorie is your calories, okay? So with carbohydrates and proteins, there's 4 calories per gram for both of those, okay? With fats, it's a very energy efficient consumption. So you actually get 9 calories per gram with fat. And then again, alcohol, I'm not including that in a basic calculation, but just for your information, you get 7 calories per gram of alcohol, and it's just empty calories with, again, no nutritional value to that. So let's do just a little example here of calculating this. Say you were giving, and before I even say that, if you guys have never just tracked what you eat in 2 weeks to see what your baseline is, that is the first place I usually suggest. If people are saying, hey, I want to make some changes, maybe they want to build some muscle, maybe they want to lose some fat, whatever it is, I tell them for 2 weeks, don't change a thing, track everything you eat, either in an app, they've got they've got a ton of apps, or write it down. But track every single thing and see what you're eating, because people are really shocked to find out what they're actually eating. They're like, I don't really eat that much. And they'll be like, oh, wow, I actually do. And again, these highly processed foods are high calorie. So you can be surprised really quick about what you're consuming. But let's just take an example. Say somebody's at about 24 calories a day. That's what they've calculated that they're going to get. And they want to do 40% of that as carbs, 30% as protein, 30% as fat. That's a pretty common thing that people do, okay? So how do you calculate what grams of what, okay? So you take that 2,400 calories, and to get the 40%, you'll multiply by 0.4. That's the 40%, okay? So for carbs, you're going to give yourself 960 calories of carbs, okay? Is this making sense to everybody? Okay. And then same thing for 30% for protein and fat. You take that same 2,400 and times 0.3, that's your 30%. And that tells you you're getting 720 calories each for protein and fat at 30%. So how does that figure out how many grams you need? You take that number. We said we're going to get 960 calories for carbs. You're going to divide that by 4 because remember we said there's 4 calories per gram in the carbs. That gives you 240 grams of carbs that you're allowed to eat. Now, how many grams, does anybody know how many grams of carbs are in a typical potato? Anybody? A little higher. See, it gets higher. It's higher than you think. You're about 25 to 30 grams in a medium potato, okay? What about a cup of rice? That's another big carb. People eat 45 grams of carbs. So you can see you pretty quickly will fill up that 240 grams. Does that make sense? So what about protein and our fat? Again, with protein, we said we get 4 calories per gram, right? So we take that 720 that we allotted ourselves, divide by 4. We're at 180 grams of protein, okay? Now let's talk about protein. If you're getting a 9-ounce steak, how much protein do you think's in that? Anybody? Take a guess. 4. That's close. Usually you're going to get, depending on the cut, it might be a little less, but close to 60 you can get. But if you have a real, fatty piece, you might be a little less than that. And then same thing if like salmon, you're about 50. So that's where you're at. Now 4 ounces of chicken, which is about half, you're getting about 30 grams of protein. So that's how you can kind of figure that out. I usually tell people, around your fist size, if you're trying to guess, is probably around 30. Close to for most of those lean meats. And then last is your fat. Now remember we said you're getting more energy from the fat because you get 9 calories per gram on the fat. So we're with the 30%, again, we're at 720 calories. If we divide that by the 9, 80 grams of fat. So, you don't have as much room on that fat, okay? So avocado, it's a great source of healthy fat. You're looking at about 25 grams there of fat, okay? A handful of nuts, depending on the nut, you're anywhere from 12 to 20 grams of fat on that. So it's it can fill up quick. I'm a big eater, and I'm telling you, I have to really watch myself if I'm doing this. So, all right. Does that make sense to everybody on a basic calculation for that? Okay. Any questions about that before we kind of go on? All right. So let's go into protein. I have a lot to say about protein because it's the macronutrient that I find especially women, and we got a lot of women in the crowd, are really low on their protein. So instead of counting all these macros and crazy things, I tell them we need to get your protein high enough and you can model everything else around that because women tend to be especially really low on their protein. What does protein break down into? Does anybody know? Amino acids, okay? That's kind of the building block. You need that for muscle. You need that for repair. It's in a lot of growth factors and insulin. You're using it in neurotransmitters, a lot of immune system support. There's a lot of things. We have about 20 different amino acids. And those amino acids, 11 of them you can kind of make yourself, okay? But there's 9 amino acids that you actually have to get from outside the body. We can't make them, okay? And those include, have you guys heard bodybuilders or people that are into lifting talk about branched chain amino acids? Has everybody heard that? Those are one of those essentials that you actually have to get from outside sources, okay? The problem with protein is our recommended daily allowance that people have set, like in the federal government and things like that, has always been too low. Their current standard is 0.8 grams per kilogram. Now let me give you an example what that means. A 150-pound person, to get their kilograms, you divide by 2.2. That gives you 68 kilograms on a 150-pound person. So you multiply that by that 0.8. that gives you 55 grams of protein. Way too low on that. They are looking to increase in the next year or two that recommended up to 1 to 1.2 grams, which would be a little bit better, but it's still low. I tell everybody, if you are active and if you're doing like some regular resistance training, that kind of thing, I like people closer to 0.8 to 1 per pound of ideal body weight. So say your healthy weight is 160 pounds, I like to see you closer to 150 to 160 grams of protein, okay? And that's what I tell, I spend a lot of time talking to people about that in the office. You really want to make sure you're hitting the protein, okay? And there used to be, the reason they started low, they did some studies that they weren't well done, to be honest with you, and they were worried about like kidney issues and stuff like that with high protein. They found none of that to be true. If you're drinking plenty of fluid and doing what you're supposed to do, you're not having any increased risk with that. So those have all been debunked, and they are going up on that RDA, but still, we're still missing the mark on that. Another thing, there's a quick rule, 30-30-30. You'll hear that sometimes, and it means 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking, followed by 30 minutes of light activity. And that is really good for your metabolic health. It's really good for fat loss. But either way, getting at least 30 grams of protein in that first meal of the day, instead of going, what do we do at a lot of these breakfast things? It's carbs like hash browns, French toast, pancakes, a lot of really heavy carbs. Get your protein in, have your eggs and that kind of stuff. Do some Greek yogurt, whatever. Get some 30 grams of protein in, okay? It'll really help jumpstart your day there. All right. So what are healthy types of protein? We're looking at beef, chicken, fish, and salmon are good, turkey. But the big things are, you want it to be grass-fed, pasture-raised, okay? You want those cow and those chicken to be able to roam and to eat the things they were supposed to eat. A lot of these factory fed like animals are in these tight containers. They're feeding them corn. I've read stuff about them they ran out of corn and was feeding all their cattle Skittles. Now, you are what you eat, okay? If they're eating all this crap, if they're eating all of this refined processed stuff or corns or high sugared stuff, you're eating that when you eat the meat, okay? So you really want to make sure that you're getting these, watching for these fertilizers and pesticides on the grasses. Regenerative farms, good. Wild caught salmon, like all of these things. But grass-fed beef without any of these extra additives are really important for the types of protein you want, okay? Now, what meat not to eat? Now, you guys are going to hate me here. I know everybody loves their hot dogs and their bacon, especially. Bacon, I did a talk on my church about the biblio diets and what they were told not to eat. And pig is actually like the worst for health. And I hate being the bearer of bad news with that because everybody loves it. But it's actually listed as a type 1 carcinogen. What's that mean? It's in the same class as like tobacco and asbestos, okay? They are highly cancer causing. In fact, if you're eating a regular 2 to 3 slices of bacon a day, it increases your risk of colorectal cancer by 18%. So very cancer causing. There's also other concerns. So parasites, you get things like trichinolysis, pork tapeworms, you get toxoplasmosis. There's a lot of different parasites, a lot of viruses and bacteria. So salmonella, listeria, E. coli, Yersinia, hepatitis, like swine flu, all of these things. So pigs are one of the worst. I hate to be the bearer, but it's one of those things. If you're eating it regular, there's plenty of great grass-fed, beautiful meats out there, but unfortunately those highly processed ones are not good. They have a lot of nitrites and nitrates, and those damage DNA and cause cancer and all the other things. And they're also linked to cancer, heart disease, and metabolic syndrome as well. So those highly processed factory farm meats, those are the ones you kind of want to stay away from, okay? I know, I'm sorry. Yeah.
How well do you recommend like venison and stuff?
That's good. Yeah, venison's good.
How do you feel about eggs, especially like pasture-raised chicken?
Love eggs. I'm a huge proponent of eggs.
Especially pasture-raised.
Absolutely, it's the same kind of thing. You got to watch what they're being fed and things like that. The truly organic ones, they can lie on a lot of those. I'm going down a side tangent, but they can lie on a lot of those egg cartons about, like, they say they'll give them free range, but it's like little, you know what I mean? They can. The USDA organic, though, they do have to be more strict with, but I would try to really know where your eggs are coming from and what they're feeding them and things like that. But I love eggs. I start the day with like 3 eggs a day. I mean, every day. I mean, I love me some eggs. So, and also, like, there's a great company I work with out of California that does like egg white pumps, so they're great. You can't taste it at all. They've taken out all the things. So really, you got to watch, you want to kind of watch how much saturated fat, and we'll go into that. But 3 eggs a day are really not supposed to increase the risk of anything with the yolks included, and then you can do even more on the egg whites after that. That's kind of what I recommend with people. So.
You're not too worried about the cholesterol content.
Nope, and I'll tell you, that's another tangent I can go down for a long time, but
There's a big debate on that, right?
there's a huge debate, and here's the problem. It's not, okay, I say cholesterol is like the firemen showing up at the scene of the fire. They're not causing the fire. It's the inflammation and all the other crap that's causing the actual issues with the vessel. The cholesterol are not, you know what I mean? And there's so many good nutrients and things with eggs and some of these saturated fats too. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but that is a big debate. And again, we used to have our cholesterol levels way higher, set higher than what they want now. And honestly, we've seen an increase in all kinds of brain and Alzheimer's stuff and everything since we've done. So yeah, so I'm a lot more lenient with some of the cholesterol things as long as you're doing the other stuff. So, all right. So what about if I don't eat meat? I'm a vegetarian and vegan. Do you guys know the difference between vegetarians and vegans? Yeah, vegetarians just don't eat meat. Vegans don't eat any animal products, right? So that's like the honey, the eggs, the dairy, all the stuff. So you can do fine on a vegetarian diet. I will tell you this. Usually you're going to need, 10 to 20% more on your protein, because to get your protein needs met, you need more calories. You need more of it, okay? You also usually need supplementation, especially things like B12, some of the irons and zincs, because you're not getting them from your meats. So you will have to do that, and that's something to consider if you're going to be vegetarian vegans. I'm not saying it can't be done. It absolutely can, but your calories are generally going to be more, and you generally will have to supplement. So that's just my little note on that. All right, let's go into fat. All right, we said proteins break down to amino acids, right? Fats, we break them down into fatty acids or glycerol, okay? You start this process early. As soon as something hits your mouth, you have little enzymes that start breaking it down in your saliva, okay? But most of this is done in your small intestines. A lot of important things with good fats, okay? It's, again, I told you it's a very concentrated energy source. Carbs are good too, but it's got the 9 calories versus the 4. It serves as a kind of protective cushion for your organs, so if protecting them and insulating them from any damage. It's needed for those fat-soluble vitamins I was talking about, A, D, E, and K. You need the fat to absorb those. It helps support your cell growth and the cell walls. The phospholipids and things all have that in them, okay? And you need it for making different products. So steroids, prostaglandins, which are big for inflammation, you need it for all of that, okay? So what are the fats? We've got 4 main categories. The main, like, ones they say, all these are the best ones, are like the monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. So monounsaturated are actually liquids. So those are your olive oils, your avocados, that kind of thing. At room temperature, they're liquid. The polyunsaturated, those are your good fish, your salmons, your some of your seeds and nuts have these, okay? And they've got both omega-3s and omega-6s. I'm going to go into a little bit more about omega-3s and 6s in a minute when we talk about seed oils. But those are usually all pretty good fats. Now, saturated, there's been a lot of misconception, and this goes with your egg conversation. These are more solid at room temperature. They're in your meats, they're in your butters and your cheeses and your coconut oils. And we've always said to kind of limit these, but here's the thing. Again, if you're eating good quality stuff, if you're eating organic grass-fed beef and meats and the butter, same thing, these really aren't bad for you. There are actually a lot of benefits with these. So there's been a lot of, again, misinformation with saturated. It's really sourcing. If you're eating crap sourcing, you're going to have bad saturated fats. So you got to kind of watch the sourcing with that. The one group everybody will agree on is you avoid trans fats. So what are trans fats? These are all those fun, tasty items like your French fries and your pastries and your fried foods and your pie and pizza crust. All of the stuff that tastes delicious, it's terrible, right? They do this process. It's all artificial. It's called hydrogenation, high temperatures. And basically, it raises your risk for heart disease by like 27%. It's well known to cause all the metabolic syndromes, so diabetes, strokes, and all kinds of inflammation, like I was talking about, being the problem with plaquing up those arteries and that kind of thing. So trans fat is the group that everybody says that you do want to avoid in general with the fats. But I want to talk about these oils for a minute. How many of you all are familiar with like seed oils and have seen in any recent things about, a couple of you guys have seen this. So they even have a fun nickname. They call them the Hateful Eight. There's hundreds of like oils out there, but really 8 to 10 that are like the consumables and foods that we eat. But the canolas, the corns, cottonseeds, all these listed here, they are very refined oils. So they've been, bleached, deodorized. They heat them in these like very carcinogenic like solvents. So like hexane, known to cause cancer and stuff. And they mix all this in during this processing. It's really pretty bad. But anyways, when I told you I'd tell you more about the omega-6s and 3s, we have both of those in our body, okay? Omega-6 tends to be more pro-inflammatory, where the omega-3 is kind of anti-inflammatory. You do need both. We do need to have some of those inflammatory processes, but the ratio should be closer to 3 to 4 to 1. In the US, our ratio is 20 to 1 in most of what we eat. So we are way more inflammatory than we should be. These are needed, yes, but not in that level. These seed oils are very high in this omega-6. A lot of that's coming there. So these seed oils, because of that, they're linked to, again, metabolic syndrome. You see in a recurring pattern here, a lot of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and they're in everything, and they're even hidden. I had a story recently. There was these beef sticks I liked from Sam's Club. It was like organic beef fed, and there was only like 3 other ingredients. And one was encapsulated citric acid, and I really didn't know what that was. I knew citric acid was from citrus fruit, but I didn't know much about it. And I saw a thing on it, and I went and looked, and sure enough, it's actually a seed oil. The encapsulated part is they have like the hydrogenated vegetable oil on the outside of this beef stick. And I didn't even know about it. Didn't read a specific seed oil. It said encapsulated citric acid. And that was one of the only. So they're hidden in everything, and they're all over the place. So it's really something to kind of educate yourself about and watch. If you can avoid the excess seed oils, you'll benefit from that. Any questions on that? Yes? You just did a great introduction to my next slide. So which oils should we use? Which oils are good for us? So olive oil. I love olive oil, but there's some caveats. You have to be careful. About 90% of what you find at the grocery store is terrible, okay? So how do you find good olive oil, okay? First of all, it should be in a glass bottle. These break down in the light, okay? So you should have them in a glass bottle protected from light, and they're usually dark glass bottles, okay? You really got to be careful. You got to check dates. They need to be within like a year on the dates, to make sure that they're actually fresh, because these oils degrade over time. Check the country of origin, and this is an easy one at the grocery store. If you're seeing multiple countries of origin, this is not good olive oil, okay? It should be one country, okay? It has to be extra virgin olive oil, EVOO, extra virgin olive oil. That also means it's cold pressed. They're not using heat and things to break these down, so cold pressed, okay? I actually order my olive oil from Greece now, and I found a company. It's not that much more expensive. It's just, I mean, it's perfect olive oil. It's what I want, and they ship it, and it's in these pretty glass bottles. I love it. But so extra virgin, cold pressed, one country. Check the dates, glass bottle, okay? So several things there, and I'm telling you, you go through the grocery store after this and see if you can find one that meets those criteria. There's not, okay? Mine's called Costa Rica. It's from from Greece, southern Greece.
We found some from Spain.
There you go. Spain's another one that's,
And you
yeah.
can tell it's different because you can drink like a little bit of it. We usually take like a teaspoon every
Yes.
night. It kind of helps with GERD. And it has this polyphenol
Yeah.
kind of like tingle. It's almost a peppery.
You can definitely taste the difference. You can tell for sure. Yeah, maybe as long as it meets those criteria, it's all good. I know we went to Greece a few years ago, and we went to one of their farms, and like it was just awesome, and so that's why I've kind of favored it, but I'm a little biased, I guess. Other good ones are avocado oil and organic coconut oil too. You can use. These are more minimally processed oils, and they've got like the monounsaturated fat. They're higher in antioxidants, and they're just better for you than those seed oils. So.
Does it have to be organic for the coconut oil?
I would. Again, the organic tends to have higher standards than the regular, so I would do that. Yeah. All right, we're moving on to carbs. So we said proteins go to amino acids, right? Our fatty acids our fats to fatty acids and glycerols. Our carbs, they break down into glucose, right? Which is a main fuel source, and it's our brain's preferred fuel source. We store extra in our liver and muscles. And how we break them down, we've got simple and complex carbs, right? Our simple ones are the most basic units of these glucose, so they're two together. We've got fructose and fruit. We got lactose, which is all in our dairy products, and sucrose, which is in like our table sugars, okay? And then you've got our more complex, the carbs that you're thinking of, so like your whole grains, your oats, your rices, your potatoes, your quinoa, your breads, your pastas, your cereals, all that kind of stuff, okay? And then another type of complex carb that doesn't actually break down is your fiber. Fiber is so important, and again, it's one of those things we tend to be deficient on a lot in our diets. So there's two types of fibers. It's soluble and insoluble. The soluble fibers actually attract the water, and it slows down digestion. This is good because it helps your blood sugars be more stable. It makes you feel more full and satiated, okay? Where your insoluble fibers, they dissolve and they bulk up the stool, and they tend to speed up digestion. But this helps with constipations and having regular bowel movements and that kind of thing. So a lot of people are low on fiber. They recommend 25 to 28 grams for women in a day and 30 to 38 grams for men in a day typically. And yeah, you can find them in a lot of foods though. A lot of the fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, they all have a lot of good fiber in them. And you can also supplement if you need to, if you're not getting enough in. All right, I'm going to go into my bread spiel here because I get crazy about the bread. All right, healthy carbs. Our breads are terrible. Again, go onto the shelves at the grocery store after this. I'm going to do a little spiel. We've got several problems with our breads today, okay? One, we have like ungerminated and unsprouted bread. Two, we hybridize all the breads. Three, we put a bunch of chemicals and pesticides on things. Four, we mill it, which means that we're removing a lot of nutrients and things. I'm going to go over these a little bit more. And five, we fortify and enrich everything. So let me break these down. When we germinate something, you get an enzyme, phytase. Why is this important? Phytase, they always name the enzyme after what it does. Phytase breaks down phytates. Phytates actually prevent you from absorbing a lot of the nutrients and stuff. So when you don't germinate or sprout, you don't get as much absorption of the nutrients and minerals, okay? Does anybody know why we do all these hybrid, like breeding everything? Why do we do that?
Parasite resistance.
Yeah, you do get some of that. They also want to get more. They want to get bigger crop yields and things like that. Why is this bad? We've increased the amount of gluten and things in breads with this process. How many people have had trouble with gluten and hear of all the gluten sensitivities and things? We have a lot more of that because of that, okay? We spray all these things. You guys know about Roundup and stuff like that we spray on all these things. We get all kinds of celiac, IBS, all kinds of GI and gut upset because of that, okay? And then what is milling or refining? So the typical like grain seed is going to have, you've got an outside endosperm, you've got a bran, and you've got a germ, okay? When you mill, you remove all of it except the endosperm. So a lot of the nutrients get lost that you had in the initial, okay? So we do that with all of our breads too. It gives it a longer shelf life basically when it does that. So we want stuff to be package stable, okay? Enriching. Enriching means that we've taken it all out during all this processing, so let's throw it back in. But it means it's been heavily processed, okay? Anytime you see that, it's a heavily processed thing. What does it mean with fortifying something? Fortifying, it wasn't there initially, but we're going to put it back in. Does that sound good? It sounds good, right? We're going to just throw a bunch of vitamins and minerals and stuff. That sounds great. The problem is we're fortifying with things that aren't naturally found and naturally absorbed. I'm going to give you a big one, folic acid. We put folic acid and stuff. About 40 to 50% of the population has a mutation where they can't break down folic acid, okay? They can do folate and methylated folate, but not folic acid. So we're putting these extra vitamins and minerals in that a lot of people can't actually break down. So it's causing even more problems. So 5 things there. We germinate, or we don't germinate. We mix these things all together, these hybrid plants. We put a bunch of chemicals and pesticides on them. We mill them and take out all their stuff. And then we put enriched and fortifying stuff into these like back end that aren't natural, okay, and aren't absorbed well. So that's the problem. So what can you do? You can get like sourdough starters. Some sprouted grain breads like Ezekiel are good. But there's very few of them. Go through the bread aisle. It's insane. I went through the other day and tried to look and see if I could find any bread just on the shelves. It was insane. The one I found that was good was disgusting. Like I couldn't even eat a piece of it. But it's bad. Like you gotta. Anyway, so other healthy carbs, fruits and vegetables. We'll talk a little bit about. Sweet potatoes, both sweet and regular, both have good vitamins, minerals. You just want to stay away from, again, anything highly processed, sugary. White breads is not good. White refined breads is not good, okay? Cookies, cakes, sugary cakes, candies, you guys know that stuff. Stay away from it, all right? Any questions on the bread thing? All right, let's talk about milk a little bit. Have you guys heard the big controversy over the raw milks? You guys know about that? Yeah. Okay, so what's the 2 words on the milk carton at the stores? There you go. Pasteurize and homogenize. What's that mean? Pasteurize, you're heating it up. The point was to kill all these bacteria, right? They want to kill things that could hurt you and extend, again, shelf life. Homogenize means that they mechanically treat it, because you guys remember when they used to have the old time, they would set the milk on the corner and the cream would rise up to the top because it had the different fat globule stuff. That's the cream rising to the top. The homogenization like takes away that. It makes it all a uniform creamy thing, okay? It's high pressure and it causes a more smooth texture. But in doing these processes, you take out a lot of the vitamins and minerals. So when you're killing the bacteria you're worried about, you're also taking out a lot of the good stuff too. You also have enzymes in there like lipase, lactase that help, prevent reactions and things to the milk that you have in raw milk that you don't have with these because of these processes that you do. And there's also more allergy and asthma protection from the raw milk as well. So raw milk is either highly regulated or illegal in about 20 states currently because of they don't want to risk any disease. Here's the thing though, again, if you have that high quality beef where they're just out doing what they're supposed to do and you're not giving them pesticides and chemicals and feeding them crap, it's pretty healthy, but obviously if you're going to eat it directly or drink it directly off the cow, you want to not have those things. So that's where you get the problems. So Hence the debate. So yes, for me personally, I think it's a lot healthier. You just got to be really careful with the sourcing and what they're eating and what they're exposed to. So also, another thing that happened is there's two enzymes. There was some kind of genetic mutation that happened with the cows, and they got this A1 enzyme. The A1 is more inflammatory. It causes a lot more gut and digestive issues, and they found that people that have a hard time with milk, if they get A2 specific milk, which is the other enzyme, because regular milk on the shelf has both A1, A2. If they just get A2, they tend to do a little better with it, actually. So that's milk. What about milk-like products? Moving on to butter. Why is margarine no good? Go ahead.
A lot of, I have goats. So
Yeah.
people contact me about goat milk and can't have
Mm-hmm.
because they can digest goat milk better than
Absolutely. I should have mentioned that the milk products and things from other animals are great. Yeah, goats especially. That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
a lot of people who are lactose intolerant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. So margarine, no good. There's, again, that trans fat thing. They create it through hydrogenation. They also use a bunch of seed oils in a lot of them, okay? You get a lot of the bad saturated fat. You have all this like chemical altering, so you get bleaching, deodorizing it, neutralizing it, all of these things not good, okay? It's the same as with the beef. The organic grass-fed butter is good, is better than the margarine. You can also use ghee, which is a clarified butter, okay? It removes like the water and milk, and it makes it lactose free, and it's pretty healthy saturated fat. So yeah, ghee's pretty good, yeah. So that's another option. Just stay away from the margarine. That would be my thing there. Now I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I'm kind of going long-winded, so I'm going to go quickly through the fruits and veggies. Basically, fruits and veggies are awesome. They all have different like nutrients in them. I divided up the fruits into a couple slides there of red. So like your strawberries. I'm going to talk about tomatoes anyways in a minute because it's funny. But lycopenes is big in there. You've got reduced cancer risk for them. Inflammation is reduced, lung protection. The orange and yellow fruits like mangoes and oranges are good for immunity, eye and skin, and collagen. Green fruits, so like kiwi and green apples, they are good for bones and eye health and heart function. And then you've got your blueberries and your blackberries. The anthocyanins in them are great for anti-aging and for memory and cognition. You guys have heard like eating blueberries is supposed to be great for your memory. And then you've got your white and brown fruits, so your bananas, pears, and those are good for keeping your cholesterol levels in a good range and reducing risks of stroke and helping with the immune system. So my basic advice on fruits is eat the rainbow. Eat them, eat the different colors, and fresh fruits are good, okay? Same with vegetables. I wanted to tell you this funny story about, do you guys know how to actually tell when something's botanically, and I say that like from a plant-wise, botanically a fruit versus a vegetable? Anybody? So, you call it a botanical fruit if it comes from a flowering plant and it has seeds in it, okay? So think about like stuff like zucchini, eggplant, pumpkins. They all come from like a flower of some sort and they have seeds in them, right? But there can be, or they can call it culinary-wise a vegetable if their taste is a little bit more less sweet, or you'd use it in a salad or something. They can be a fruit botanically and culinary a vegetable. So it's kind of interesting how they do that. But they had this huge debate, and this was clear back in 1893 about tomatoes, whether they were a fruit or a vegetable. And it actually went clear to the U.S. Supreme Court, which I find hilarious. It was Nix versus Heaton is what it was. And they said, this was hilarious, they classified the tomato as a vegetable for taxation purposes because it is eaten with dinner, not dessert. So it's kind of funny how they do these things sometimes, but that's not really important. I just found it humorous, so I wanted to share it. But anyways, So how do we define veggies? You got leafy greens, so that's your spinach and kale, the cruciferous, which, you know, broccoli, cauliflower, your root vegetables, so your carrots and your beets, allium vegetables, so your garlic, onions, that kind of stuff. Tubers, those are your potatoes. The legumes, those tend to be higher protein. A lot of our vegetarians will do a lot more legumes because they got all the beans and things in them. And then stem and shoot vegetables such as asparagus, celery, rhubarb, okay? Again, I'm not going to read through this. You guys have the slides, and I didn't put every vegetable, but I wanted to make the point that all of these have specific nutrients in them that really help you in different ways. There's a lot of anti-cancer research with like broccoli specifically and the leafy greens. There's a lot of anti-cancer potential. A lot of the supplements they use when they're treating cancer from a functional standpoint are like high doses of like broccoli sprouts and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool things in there. Carrots, you guys have heard how great they are for the eyes and for vision. You know, again, same thing with spinach and cancer. There's a lot there. Cucumbers have a high water content, so if you're struggling with hydration, you can eat a lot of cucumbers and they're good for you. Peppers with their capsaicin, they're a lot of high antioxidant potential. And then onions, a lot of anti-inflammatory. My grandpa used to tell me to put an onion in your room, and have you guys heard that old thing about you should...
Onion on your feet.
Yeah, onion on your feet to suck out stuff, or like to suck out the bad stuff from a room. You just leave an onion in your room. But I mean, lots of things there. And all of these have specific. I just wrote down a few, but they all have really cool benefits there. So for different things. But fruits and veggies, good for you. All right, I want to go now into the artificial sweeteners and the dyes. I'm going to talk about dyes first. So this is a great year for giving this talk because have you guys seen the new FDA stuff? Yes, I am super happy about that. There have been like 9 dyes that we use in a lot of foods. I mean, I'm talking 1 in 5 packaged foods have these dyes. And Red 3, we've already kind of done the boot on, right? And it was shown that it was carcinogenic again, cancer causing. Excuse me. And then there's 3 big dyes that had a lot of benzene in them, which are good, again, carcinogenic, and 4 that they found had a lot of like reactions and allergic problems with them. So by the end of this year, we are supposed to get rid of red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, blue 1, blue 2, and green 3, and those have 3 of those out of the 6 have 90% of all the food dyes. So by the end of this year, we are supposed to phase all of those out of our foods. It's about freaking time. Agreed. Yes. So anyways, super excited about that. And yeah, just a good thing. What about artificial sweeteners? Saccharin, sweet and low, right? Aspartame itself, they have so many allergic reactions and sensitivities to those. It's not even funny, along with the other stuff. And then sucralose, Splenda, those are the big ones. What are the problems with these? So, these dyes and sweeteners both, they've been linked to behavioral issues in kids, a lot of the ADHDs and neurological issues. They can also alter, I don't know if you guys have heard much about gut bacteria and the microbiome, but it's huge. And actually, most of your serotonin receptors, which are mood and things, lie in your gut, not in your brain. Okay, so the gut microbiome is a huge thing, and these artificial sweeteners, dyes can all alter these. Okay, they can also cause metabolic dysfunction because they interfere with insulin regulation. It confuses your body because you're thinking you're getting this big sugar load and your insulin spikes, so it can really cause metabolic issues, increased risk of strokes and cardiovascular disease, okay? They can increase sugar cravings. It was actually, they did studies with a lot of the diet drinks over time, even with the 0 calories, those people tend to increase weight because they make you have sugar cravings, they make you want to eat more, so even though the drink itself, so a lot of those studies out there, again, cancer and DNA damage with these. So not good. Also, I wanted to give you this list. There are so many things on packaging that are added sugars and people don't know what they are. This is only a small list here, but sucrose, sucralose, glucose, dextrose, maltose, fruit juice concentrate, fructose corn syrup, molasses, agave, and that's only a small list. If it ends in the OSO, that can be a clue that it's an added sugar. Basically, these are excess calories. They have no good nutrients in them, okay? Again, they contribute to obesity, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, stroke, fatty liver, all the things. And they also give you cavities and make your skin look like crap. So that's just another reason not to use them. So what are some alternatives we can use? And we're getting to the end, guys. I think I'm running long here. What are some alternatives? Honey is a great one, okay? Honey has a lot of benefits. Antioxidant, it's anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial too. It's good for coughs, wound healing. It gives you good energy. Excuse me. It can help your heart and gut health. And also, organic pure maple syrup is good too. Again, if it's just a one ingredient, it's still high sugar, but it's natural. It's coming out of a tree, okay? Small amounts, if you have to use a sugar substitute, go ahead. Other things like monk fruit might be a good, it's 0 calorie, doesn't raise your sugar like that. People ask me about stevia. You kind of got to watch it a little bit. A lot of times it's mixed with sugar alcohols or other sweeteners, so you kind of got to watch that. It is taken from plant, but it can also cause a little GI upset, so maybe better than some of those others, but still there's some issues you got to watch with it, okay? Finally, as we're wrapping up, I cannot say enough about hydration. We are a very dehydrated nation. I can give you some baselines, but basically I'm going to tell you drink more water as I take my sip, okay? The general recommendation is 2.7 liters for women and 3.7 for men a day. How many in here think you're drinking 3 liters of water a day?
I'm close.
We got 4 people out of the room who may be close, okay? In general, we're not getting enough water in, okay? Another way you can do this is half your body weight in ounces a day. So, for instance, say you weigh 186 pounds, divide it by 2, 93 ounces. There's 33.814 ounces in a liter. That gives you the 2.75. So that's another, those are rough things. This isn't a catch-all because if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, if you're an athlete, you know, or you have a demanding job where you're working out in the heat all day, you may need more. A way you can do this, you can check your urine. It should be a light pale yellow color unless you're taking all those B vitamins and you got, you know, all the orange yellow. But it should be light pale yellow. If you're dark, that may be a sign. Also, you don't want to wait till you're thirsty, okay? A lot of times that's your past your mark. You're already a little on the dehydrated side when you get thirsty. So don't wait for that. As soon as you wake up, drink at least a full cup of water. You spent all night dehydrating. So as soon as you wake up, you should have a glass of water and just take a half a liter and just drown it. But cut out the pop and sugary drinks and the stuff that dehydrates and just drink your water. You'll feel a ton better too. You'll feel more awake. You'll feel more alert, all the things, okay? And I would be remiss if I did all this talk on nutrition and I didn't say at least a note on physical activity because they go hand in hand. We're made to move. Our bodies should be in motion, okay? Muscle is tied to longevity. There's studies on your quad size, which is inversely correlated with mortality, meaning the bigger your quads, the less likely you are to die. Same with grip strength, okay? I tell people minimum 3 days of resistance training. You're not going to get beefy and bulky with that. This is just maintaining, it's preventing osteoporosis. It's helping your insulin regulation. Lean muscle mass also will increase your metabolism. So there's just all kinds of things. Pick something you like to do and stay consistent with it, but you have to have the movement with the nutrition. They go hand in hand, okay? And my final last thoughts before your questions and your door prizes. Get sunshine outside, okay? Get your vitamin D. Put your bare feet on the earth, which sleep, really important. You cannot recover well and you cannot fight anything. You cannot have the immune support. You cannot be your best self without sleep. Stop treating it like a commodity and get your sleep. Make it a priority, okay? Relationships with your community, with your spiritual life, whatever it is, develop those relationships. And also, I'm huge on hormones and hormone replacement, so mind your hormones is my last thought on that. Those are just some overall arching health themes that I think we need to pay more attention to. I appreciate you guys listening to me, and thanks for having me.